Johann Sebastian Bach, Robert Schumann, Clara Schumann, and Johannes Brahms are all familiar names to us. A lot of us have likely heard these names since the early years of our musical training and played, sung, or studied music by them. However, how many of us know that there is a book of Bach's music that contains direct annotations from Robert Schumann, Clara Schumann, and Brahms right in this building? This is Like a Man, the Clara Schumann Bach book and women's influence on Bach's keyboard music in the Romantic period. Clara Schumann lived from 1819 to 1896. She was born in Leipzig, Germany, and was one of the most prominent concert pianists of her time. Robert Schumann lived from 1810 to 1856. He married Clara Weich Schumann in 1840 and was a prominent composer, best known for his lieder, piano music, and orchestral music. Johannes Brahms lived from 1833 to 1897. He was a close friend of Robert and Clara Schumann, particularly to Clara after Robert's death. All three of these composers and performers were essential to the 19th century music scene and influenced countless musicians after them. All of them were also inspired by Bach's music. Bach, also from Germany, lived from 1685 to 1750. Bach's influence on the Schumanns and Brahms can be seen throughout the Clara Schumann Bach book, a collection of Bach organ works that features annotations from all three composers. While many historical documents relating to the Schumanns are housed in the Robert Schumann House in Zwickau, Germany, the Clara Schumann Bach book is housed right here in the Riemenschneider Bach Institute. After Clara's death, the collection of music remained in possession of her family, but during World War I, it was sold to Hug & Co., a Zurich firm, who then sold it to Albert Riemenschneider. Past scholars, Russell Stinson and Alexander Stefaniak in particular, have been essential to my research. Russell Stinson studied the book and detailed how the book got to the RBI, what pieces are in it, and who wrote which markings. Alexander Stefaniak is a prominent Schumann scholar and BW grad who has thoroughly researched Clara's career as a woman composer and performer in the Romantic era. For today, we will be looking at one piece within the Clara Schumann Bach book, Bach's Organ Toccata and Fugue in F major, BWV 540. This is the first page of the toccata. The markings in red were made by Robert Schumann, and the markings in pencil were made by Clara Schumann. Here is a closer look at Clara's annotations in the first few measures of the toccata. The purpose of her markings in this section is to transcribe the organ music for piano. She accomplishes this by playing what would be the pedal notes played with your feet and puts them in the left hand of the piano. She also adds a lower octave to give it more sound. Because the piano cannot sustain notes the same way an organ can, the left hand frequently jumps downward to play these notes. And when this happens, the right hand takes over playing both the right and left hand original lines. For reference, the toccata was written for a Baroque organ in Bach's time, something like the organ pictured here. The piano was not yet a commonly used instrument during Bach's time, but had gained a lot of popularity by the Romantic era. The Romantic piano also had the technical capabilities to withstand playing an organ transcription, which is something earlier keyboard instruments would not have been able to accomplish. Here are the opening measures of the toccata as it was originally composed for organ. Listen to the sustained pedal note providing the foundation for the upper lines. We might be hearing it in a moment. One second. We're going to revisit this one in a moment, but I'm just going to tell you it's in F major. There is a long pedal note, as we can see in the score, and it's holding out throughout the entire lines, which are mimicking each other. And if somebody knows what's going on with the audio and wants to come and fix it in the next coming minutes, that would be fantastic. Okay, here is what Clara's transcription likely would have sounded like. She would have likely used the sustain pedal to hold out the bass notes when possible. Listen for the repeats of the bass note in order to maintain the sound, and we will see if this one works. Or maybe not. We're going to revisit this in a moment too, again, if anyone knows what's going on with the audio anywhere, and feel free to help. We'll come back to this in a minute. Here we can take a closer look at both Robert and Clara's markings. While Clara's markings serve to transcribe the piece for piano, Robert's serve another purpose. In measures 112 to 113, Robert crosses out several notes and replaces them to create a more scalar line, shown in the highlighted notes of the lower example. This shows his confidence in his compositional and editorial abilities to freely edit Bach's music. At the top of the second page of the toccata, Robert wrote a large message. It says, "Fehlen zwei Takte es Transpos," which means 2 measures are missing, see transposition. He provides a transposition at the top of the page next to the annotation. This further shows the editorial nature of his annotations in the Clara Schumann Bach book. Clara never performed this arrangement of the toccata and fugue. However, Brahms was known to frequently perform it. This leads us to question, why didn't Clara perform her own arrangement? And why didn't Brahms just write his own? This is not to say, however, that Clara did not perform any of Bach's music. In the first decade of her career, Clara performed only 4 pieces by Bach: Prelude and Fugues in C-sharp major, D major, E major, and F-sharp major, all from Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1. The only one she really frequently performed, though, was Prelude and Fugue in C-sharp major. She spent a lot of her time performing popular piano arrangements of opera music and other virtuosic early Romantic works. As her career continued, Clara shifted her attention from popular virtuosic arrangements to the works we now know as the Western classical canon. She performed significantly more Bach and Beethoven, notably her own transcription of Bach's organ, prelude and fugue in A minor, and his chromatic fantasy and fugue, neither of which are included in the Clara Schumann Bach book. This is not to say that she stopped performing these popular works entirely, but she did perform them significantly less. For a modern-day comparison, this would be like stopping performing Rush E at every recital that you play in and performing Bach fugues instead, just so we can understand what she was doing here. Clara's performance shift from popular arrangements to Bach and Beethoven had a significant impact on her reputation as a musician. Although her performance of Bach began right around the time of Bach's 19th century revival, he still carried a weighty reputation of excellence and importance. While performing these opera fantasies and other virtuosic Romantic works was seen as impressive, Bach's work was seen as scholarly and important. This helped Clara in establishing herself as a prominent woman musician. By making Bach's works a staple in her own concerts, she transformed her reputation from that of a virtuosic young woman to an intelligent and respectable scholarly musician. Bach even helped her combat the sexist actions and comments she frequently faced, which can be seen through her own Preludes and Fugues, Opus 16. Clara never publicly performed these pieces, and they were heavily influenced by Bach. Despite this, they helped her gain a lot of respect. They were published in 1845, right around the time she began adding large amounts of Bach music to her regular concert programs. As a lot of us may suspect, women were not seen as capable composers or even capable musicians in general during the 19th century. I'm going to share some reviews of Clara's Preludes and Fugues that, while positive, show the sexist views of the time. This is probably the first time that a female artist is attempting this beautiful but difficult genre, said Robert Schumann. This quote is referring to the highly contrapuntal style in which Bach wrote and in which Clara is writing in her Preludes and Fugues. This shows how women were thought to be incapable, but how Clara writing in the style helped dispel doubts regarding her abilities. Another review says that the fugues were worthy of emulation because the feminine Geist prefers abandoning itself to lyrical expression alone. This is basically saying that because it doesn't sound like a woman wrote it, it is worthy of praise and admiration. But the review that really sticks out to me the most says that Clara Schumann composes like a man. She composes fugues that compete with the best. Again, this is saying that because it sounds like a man could have written it, it is good music. Although all of these quotes are incredibly sexist, they show the respect Clara gained from participating in Bach's works and styles. At this time, the Western classical music canon was not nearly as established as it is today. Clara, one of the most prominent performers of her time, played an important role in establishing the canon by choosing what composers she wanted to perform, Bach becoming one of them as her career progressed. This highlights how she still influenced Bach's music, despite the limitations placed upon her by her gender in this time period. Because she was performing music that was created by a man, it was seen as acceptable. Her countless performances of Bach specifically helped to elevate his reputation as the iconic composer we know today. She not only did this with Bach, but also composers living at the same time as herself, including Robert Schumann, Brahms, Mendelssohn, and Chopin. Through both Clara's annotations in the Clara Schumann Bach book and her own compositions modeled after Bach, we can see how she used Bach's music to change her own reputation and how she influenced the perception of Bach's works in the Romantic period. Although she was not given the same respect as composers like Robert Schumann and Brahms, she was still able to participate in Bach's music through her role as an interpreter and practitioner. She expertly transcribed Bach's organ toccata and fugue in F major, which Brahms frequently performed. Her deep understanding on the piano as an instrument and of Bach's contrapuntal styles allowed her to adapt his works for her own purposes. This is different than the role we see Robert playing in the toccata and fugue annotations. He adds and edits notes, taking on the role of composer and editor. As seen from the quotes about Clara's preludes and fugues, this is not a role that women were often respected or even allowed to be in. Before we conclude, let's revisit those audio examples and see if they want to work for us today. If not, I have another idea. Let's see. Okay, bear with me. We're going to pull it up on my iPad because we love technology, and I'm going to play it through here on the speaker. Okay, I don't know if everyone will be able to hear it, so my apologies. So that was how it was originally composed for organ. Now let's hear how it was composed for piano. Let's see. Just double checking that it doesn't work on here. Okay, it's appearing not to work, but no fear. We will pull it up on here. Okay. Okay. Play. While this is loading, if you are interested in learning more about the Clara Schumann Bach book, please join me for a longer version of this presentation at Bach Festival. It will be Friday, April 12th at 2 p.m. in Finette. Let's see if we can hear this piano transcription. So as you can hear there, Clara is replacing those bass notes and repeating them over and over so that you can still hear that sustained sound to mimic the pedal of the organ. I look forward to further study about Clara Schumann and other women composers in the Romantic era and how they influenced and played a role in Bach's music. While women musicians faced countless challenges, and still do today, they were essential to shaping the classical music canon that we know and study now. Thank you.